intention of helping them regulate their status before they graduate to enable them to access employment and college opportunities. And I work very heavily with pro bono law firms to provide services to clients that come from many, many different countries, have many different language skills and English language proficiency, have a myriad of other types of interests and issues that they're facing, identify with many other different cultural groups. And so one of the things that's been on my mind for a long time is how to develop more cultural competency with the pro bono lawyers that we work with, and it's been a challenge. Last year I was lucky enough to be a co-chair of the Best Practices in Pro Bono and Legal Services Committee of the New York City Bar, and one of our projects was to do a needs survey of all the folks working in the New York area to see where we're at in terms of developing or learning about cultural competence and what the needs are. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today as a way to sort of inform how we're not really at the same level as other professionals. And you know, if you compare the legal profession to health care, and I think we'll get to one aspect that I think is really important and sort of the approach I've been trying to take. So to give you a little bit of context, we surveyed folks and started with trying to get an assessment of the community we were referring to, and so it is very New York centric. I know we're in DC now, and I don't know if the next step is to sort of look at something more nationally. I know the ABA Commission started a major initiative that I think had a lot of impact in New York in terms of like getting diversity and inclusion implemented as a CLE requirement in order for bar readmission, and certainly there's more focus on this effort. But right now, the folks that participated in this survey, the majority have either worked at private law firms as pro bono counsel or worked in nonprofit, and there were a few others. Then we asked, when was the last time you took some kind of training in cultural competency? And less than half had done something in the last year. So I do think that requirement to incorporate this different aspects of this sort of training into all lawyers' continuing legal education is a really important initiative that I was really happy to see implemented in the state of New York. And I was sort of surprised, and maybe it's because I went to CUNY Law School. I went to a public interest focused law school. That was our mission. And so this was very much part of our curriculum to learn. There was a seminal article written by Professor Sue Bryant and Professor Jean Coe on developing 5 habits of cultural competency as a lawyer. And so, when I see that folks have never, ever taken a training in it, and surprisingly some of those same individuals said they think about it all the time, so I sort of saw a disconnect in thinking about it but not actually taking time to attend a training. And everybody feels very busy and that they're doing so much, but I thought it was interesting to see how many people are prioritizing a lifelong learning in this area and see it on the same level of importance as learning substantive law training or developing competence under the ethical rules does include cultural competency, and are people really aware of that and embodying that in their day-to-day practice. And so here we saw that people are thinking about it constantly. So I think that is a good thing, that they're thinking about it, and we just want to move it more into action. And certainly we were hoping that this survey could prompt or lay a foundation to do more of that. And then we started looking at what was prompting people to think about it. Are they thinking about it when there's an issue? Are they thinking about it either from the legal services perspective when they're pitching a case to a pro bono law firm, or trying to schedule a pro bono training? I'm having enough trouble getting volunteer lawyers to learn about immigration law. How do I also get them to go to a training on working with limited English proficient clients, and there's a whole separate training you can do on working effectively with interpreters, and a lot of tips and tools, and we've done programs like that at the City Bar. But again, people are not always scheduling time for this, and so can we think about how to improve the training modules for substantive law that incorporate cultural competency? And so those are the things that we were thinking about, and we sort of asked people to give us other examples. So hopefully people are thinking about it in their hiring practices and when engaging with the community. And that was very interesting to me because last year I was one of the volunteers at JFK when the Muslim ban was initiated, the first version, 1.0. And one of the things that I observed, I was moved into a supervisory role where I was delegating volunteer lawyers to go to the different terminals. And we also used a community interpretation model, which I actually read about initially from Professor Munir Ahmad, who wrote a really amazing article called Interpreting Communities, and I can share the link with Yolanda if anyone's interested in afterwards. And it looked at developing community interpreter models that can help facilitate, because, unfortunately a lot of the folks that are providing pro bono legal services may not be coming from the backgrounds of the individuals that need the services. And so how do you create an opportunity for people to learn about these cultures and provide effective service? And so a community lawyering model can be really effective. A community interpreter model, in addition to community lawyering models, can be a very effective way to do that. And that was really beneficial in that context, because you had a group of lawyers in suits on their iPhones in a circle, and there are signs around them that say, in different languages, like to come get help if someone in your party was, detained. But, it's going to be very hard for someone to approach a very similar looking group of lawyers that are not, open to, necessarily engaging with the people around them, because they're, answering emails. They are volunteering, but there's certain, needs that they have to, commitments that they have to fulfill. And so, one of the interpreters, brought it to my attention, because I wasn't at every terminal, and so then when we did the next session to train the next, recruits for the different shifts that were being deployed during that time, they, we incorporated that, we adapted, their to-do list. Don't sit in a circle on your phone because no one's going to ask you for help if you're not, and work with the interpreter to approach families and be more proactively, and not have sort of the interpreters here, the lawyers here, and no one's really talking to you. And I think that was a real important learning moment, and by not having people from the community involved in the process, I think there are a lot of gaps in service delivery and missed opportunities, both to learn and to provide the best legal service that you can. And so that was an example that came to my mind when I was, thinking about today and thinking about the different models that we use, and certainly in that moment in time. So I think, I don't know if I should have started with this, but we did look at how do you define cultural competency, and we started with, there's an organization called the National Center for Cultural Competence, and I'm like, they seem like a good source to get a baseline definition. And so they defined it as a set of behaviors, attitudes, and policy that come together in a system, agency, or among professionals and enable that system, agency, or those professionals to work effectively in cross-cultural situations. In the legal services and pro bono world, the cultures can include, but are not limited to, the ethnic, racial, socioeconomic, and educational backgrounds of clients and lawyers. Or it can also be the culture of law firms and legal services organizations. And then we asked people to also define it, because we didn't want to just rely on this one definition, because I think, and this was something that when I was doing some reading and preparation and trying to develop the needs survey, is on here, but I looked at it from the perspective, again, where I do think the medical profession is a little bit ahead of us in this realm, and they're not even doing cultural competence, they're doing cultural humility, which really spoke to me.
Yes.
Because I think it's part of, I don't know, not to lump all lawyers, but this idea that you can master this thing by taking one class or going, getting this degree or doing this thing and check it off, and all of a sudden, I've done this training today, I'm now culturally competent.